Welcome back to the series, everyone. We are up to Platinum 1. Usually in grade 1 we would be introducing some new combos, but the combos that we are going to introduce in Platinum are very marginal, not so important, and we really want to introduce instead another layer to our drive rush game, and that's really going to carry us through most of Platinum. So I thought let's put this in Platinum 1 and then we'll do some combos in Platinum 3, because our Platinum 3 combos are, like, as I said, pretty marginal. They don't come up very often, and even when they do, they don't radically change the situation for you the way the side switch combo does. They just get you some more damage. What we want to talk about instead is in neutral, our low and overhead drive rushes, and then very occasionally doing this one. Now, one thing that I have mentioned in a previous video, but at a time when it wasn't really that important for you guys, and that I didn't mention in the previous video, was the drive rush technique. So you don't want to hold parry and then drive rush. No matter how fast you do that, you will lose more than a bar. So try to watch the drive gauge at the top. Right, see how it tapped into the second bar there? The second bar started going down. If you get your drive rush technique correct, you should be able to do it like that. So it just takes off one bar and doesn't go into the second bar. That's important for drive gauge management, but it's even more important for how fast your drive rush comes out. So anytime you hold the parry slightly, there'll be a blue flash and then a green flash. And you don't really want that because it just gives more signal to your opponent that you're doing something. You want to be able to go straight into the drive rush, which there I did at that time. So I have practiced this quite a bit, and I think I still only really get it like maybe half the time. But it is worth practicing both for drive gauge management and for making your drive rushes really sudden. And basically the technique is to press forward parry forward. And that way it'll come out automatically. See, there I was too slow, but you can see in my inputs that it was pretty good, and there my inputs were perfect. So you can see there that it's forward and then neutral. You see me hit the parry, and then I'm holding forward and the parry. That's at the top of the screen there. That's what is important, and that way you get the sort of instant drive rush, and that's what we want. So that's the first thing I want to say about drive rushing, is to make sure you practice that technique. And if you're going to do a training session on drive rush, I would suggest the first minute or so just work on that. I didn't get it that time. I did get it that time. So try to get that technique down until you really feel like 10 times in a row you get it. The second thing I want to say about drive rush is that, particularly with Ryu, you can't just be drive rushing from back here. There are some characters, Koff, Yuri, Koff, DJ, who can do that, and they will. They'll just like sit around here, they'll do nothing in particular, and you're standing there and you're like, what are we doing here, mate? What are we doing? Like, I know you want to drive rush at me. Like, that's all you've got. You've got dive kick with Yuri and you've got drive rush, because despite Yuri having awesome neutral buttons, you're not going to use any of them. You just want to drive rush. And so they'll hang out here and then they'll drive rush at you, because their drive rush is like instant. And Ken similarly will kind of drive rush at you from around here. And I think Luke's as well will drive rush at you from around here, because Luke's drive rush is really fast. And I think that's why I found it so much easier to get Luke into Master than I did to get Ryu, is that Luke can just do neutral drive rushes with much more impunity than Ryu. And he also gets OP off just everything, because his drive rush is fast and long. Ryu's is long, like you can get in, but it's so slow. Look at him, he's like coming to tackle you like a linebacker. Alright, so really what you want to be doing with Ryu is drive rushing from about here. So you're sort of throwing fireballs, you're doing your pokes, occasionally you're coming in solar plexus, maybe you're coming in heavy punch. Ooh, don't do that. Come in heavy punch fireball. The reason why I got that dragon punch there is because I held forward and then you get the dragon punch. So you need to make sure that you come in, just press punch, and then from that neutral fireball motion, and then you'll get it. I get caught by that still occasionally, and it's really devastating in matches. Anyway, so you're just always playing at this range with Ryu. This is your range, right? From here, you can dragon punch light really easily. If someone jumps in on you, you can do cross cuts pretty easily. If someone jumps over you, you can move into the danger zone, get your pressure started pretty easily, and you can do neutral drive rush from here quite effectively. I didn't get the timing right that time, but from there, right? And that's hard to react to if you're in here and then suddenly you're drive rushing into your opponent's face. So you want to drive rush from about here, and just every now and then you want to do it to keep your opponent guessing, to overload their mental stack. We don't want to ever drive impact in neutral because the risk reward of drive impact is really bad, and generally the risk reward of jumping in is also bad unless your opponent's throwing fireballs, because it's so easy to anti-air this because it takes ages. Drive impact is a little bit harder to react to, still pretty easy to react to. But the main thing is that if your opponent beats your drive impact, you're about to eat so much damage, so much drive gauge damage, it's going to be real bad for you. Whereas throwing fireballs have much less risk, and drive rush has much less risk as well, especially from this range, because if your opponent blocks or something, you're still plus in their face. And that's what we want to do to get our pressure started. Similarly with this one, right? We're still plus in their face. The big difference between this approach and drive rush neutral is that neutral drive rush only costs 1 bar, whereas this costs 3, right? And that's why we want to integrate the neutral drive rush more substantially into our game, because it only costs us that 1 bar and it gets our pressure started. All right, what 2 variations on the drive rush do we introduce? So far we've only talked about cancelling low forward into drive rush. That time, you know, I should have done the heavy punch. We get a hit, we get a heavy punch. If we get a block, we come in low, and then we can either follow up with that or the throw. And the other one we talked about in neutral is drive rush neutral into crouch and medium punch, because on hit it's +9, so we can go into this, or we can go into this sequence. And that's quite tasty. That gets us good damage, good corner carry, and we can easily confirm our hits so that we don't accidentally tatsu when we shouldn't have. And it's +4 on block, so we can easily throw, we can easily continue it with some pressure string like this, we can go out and shimmy. Now we want to introduce the high-low mix-up. The high-low mix-ups are a little bit less straightforward. There's fewer plus frames of advantage for you to confirm whether there's been a hit or a block. They don't do as much damage, generally speaking, but they make it harder for your opponent to block, and they mean that there's just another layer of things for your opponent to think about. So if you're always drive rushing in with this, then your opponent's going to realize that after a while, and they're just going to crouch block all your drive rushes. If you're coming in with a throw occasionally, that at least means that they have to think about delay teching. So we want to add that in, and once we have crouch medium punch or drive rush throw, then we add in the high-low, which we're doing now. All right, so as usual, we just get our man Akuma into the neutral here. We get him on blocking at random, and for now I think I have everything turned off on his block and damage reversals. Both of these you should already know because we introduced them as Oki options way back in earlier videos, but now we're doing them off the neutral drive rush. So you drive and rush in, and you're going for the low there, and the low on block is +1. Now that means that if you follow it up with a medium and Akuma does a jab, he will beat you out of your pressure. Now most players aren't going to do that, especially if you've done one of these already, because they're really used to that being plus. People usually assume that after drive rush you're plus, and if you notice that someone's jabbing a lot after drive rush, then just go back to doing this one and just put pressure on them, because you're +4 there, so this medium punch is going to beat their jab all the time. Try to be aware of what your opponent is doing, and if they're a masher, then adjust your techniques accordingly. But if they're not a masher, then this will sometimes work. But if they notice you're doing this a lot, then hopefully they also start jabbing, because they know that that's a fake string. So what we ideally want to do is on block, we want to go into jab. Now that's pretty hard to notice because you've only got 1 plus frame of advantage. So that jab you have to realize pretty quickly that they've blocked, not gotten hit, and you get the jab out. If you get a hit, then you want to go into medium punch. That one there, and then you can either go into the target combo engine, or you can go into tatsu. I sometimes also like to do, that works quite well as a sequence because you've got plenty of time to confirm it into Tatsu. All right, so the nice thing is that even if you don't quite get it right, and like I don't quite get it right all the time on this one, and I have practiced it a fair bit, the difference in outcome between these two sequences is pretty low. So let's put Akuma just on not blocking anything for a second. So if I go in and I do that one, I get 12 damage. Pretty good, like Tatsu finish. If I go in and do 1430 damage, right? So I get an extra 250, that's less than a jab. Right, so don't beat yourself up if you got a hit that you just went into the jab string. That's not a problem. Equally, don't beat yourself up if you get a block and you go into this string, because most players aren't going to jab you out of that, and that does give you a bit more time to confirm into that sequence. All right, but that's basically your flow chart for low. So drive rush in, hit them with the low, and if you get a hit, then you want to go into crouch medium punch or the medium punch target combo, whichever one you prefer. We haven't really introduced Denjins yet, but we are going to do that in the next video. Denjin charge is a big part of Ryu's pressure game. So I like to get the Denjin charge most of the time, unless I've got my opponent in the corner. One more Tatsu will just really carry them there. If they block, then jab string, or of course you can go into the throw. Generally speaking, in these lower grades, gold, you really have to establish the strike first. Like, people are mashing, they love mashing. It's only really in Diamond 4-5 that people stopped mashing. So I think generally you have to establish first that you're gonna follow up with a strike. You're gonna punch them in the mouth if they're not careful. All right, and then you can of course do this one. Right, if they're just blocking all the way through, but I don't really think that's worth it. That opens you up to too many weirdo drive impact sequences from opponents. So I think just generally, like, stop after this light kick and chill, right, and see what your opponent does. Just walk back out of the pressure. All right, once you've established the strike and your opponent's finally blocking, then you can get into the throw. And of course, once you've established the throw, then you can go into the shimmy. If you see someone just beating all your options really early on, like every time you strike them, they seem to block, and every time you throw them, they seem to tech, then you know what's going on. They're delay teching, and then you need to get the shimmy in earlier, right? And then you'll get it in there. All right, so how do you practice that? Well, of course, as before, you go into your block reversal settings and you just start with him either blocking for 5 frames or doing a crouching light punch, and then you go into your dummy settings and you put him on block at random, save it up, get into the range that you want. And remember, we want to practice realistically, so we just want to move around a bit like we're playing neutral, and then drive rush in. Alright, so sometimes he's going to block us and we'll be able to throw him, but other times he's going to jab out of that throw. Just get that sequence going, get comfortable with it, and then once you're comfortable with it, then again go in there and turn on drive impact as well, turn on Gore Shoryu, so you're really encouraged to shimmy, and turn on delay tech. Maybe delay tech is the first one you want to turn on, so that you get used to occasionally doing the shimmy. I've got to get into block, don't I? Oh, there he jabbed me. Nice. Jab me again. Jab me again. Oh, nice. I got the hit there. He does not want to get baited by my shimmy. So in any case, practice that and you occasionally work your shimmy in. All right, so that's the low option. The next option that we have is the overhead. Now, overhead on hit is +7, just like the low is +7. So if you get the hit, you can go into your medium punch. If you get the hit off the overhead, you can also go into medium punch. And that's generally what you're going to be looking for. Tatsu, or if you want big damage, then we can go into OD, donkey kick, and off to our level 2 combo. I swear this level 2 combo just won me so many matches, right? Because you get that sequence all the time. People wake up into your medium punch, you deal them 4,000 damage and then another 2,500 damage. You got full corner carry. It only costs you 2 bars of super. It's just so delicious, that combo. So really be using it often. The thing to note about overhead is that overhead is +3 on block, but it leaves you quite far from your opponent. So you can just sneak in and get the throw pretty quickly. There's only a couple of frames in there for them to react. But if they're mashing jab, they're going to beat you. Like really obviously they're going to beat you. Right? I have no chance to win there. And very high level players will fuzzy jab, but I don't think you'll see that until you get to master. Because fuzzy jab has a 2-frame window, so it's too difficult. I don't fuzzy jab really, it's too hard. Okay, so the thing is that generally you want to continue with the strike because you'll get a hit like that, but you won't be able to confirm that hit, right? Because that's a single hit confirm and you only have 6 frames of advantage. So generally speaking, what I do on the overhead is that I always follow it up with the crouching medium punch, and then I try to confirm whether if I got a hit on the overhead, then I'll do Tatsu. If they blocked on the overhead, then I'll do Fireball. Right. That's what I mean. So every time he blocked, I did crouch medium punch into Fireball. Every time I hit, I did crouch medium punch into Tatsu, right? Or into OD donkey kick or whatever it is that you might want to do. You can also go into another drive rush if you want to spend the bar. Something like that. Should have done a punch heavy, but whatever. Right, and I think that's generally it. And then once you've really established that you're always going to strike them and they're at least going to eat a Fireball, then occasionally you can get in with your throw because they won't be mashing jab because you've punished them so often for mashing jab. All right, and that's basically it for Platinum 1. So just be working in the drive rush low and the drive rush overhead into your game. Don't stop doing this one. This is really important because it's so fast and it leaves you so plus. Really important stuff. But start to get those other mix-ups into your game. Just give your opponent more things to think about, more things to look at, more frame data to be worried about, all that kind of stuff, and then they'll make more mistakes. Note that the overhead is pretty slow, right? Especially if you're coming in from this close, you're going to hold your fist in the air there for ages. So if your opponent loves to jab in response to drive rush, then he's going to get you. And if your opponent loves to drive impact when they see someone drive rushing at them, then the overhead is going to lose to drive impact most of the time because the overhead can't be cancelled into drive impact, right? I was mashing drive impact there the whole time. You can see in my inputs and it didn't come out. So if my opponent had drive impacted me, I'd be screwed. So generally speaking, I don't do neutral overhead very often. That's the rare one. I'm mostly doing this sort of thing. And then if my opponent's drive impacting, I'm going to be able to cancel very easily, either because this recovers really fast or because this actually cancels into drive impact, no problem. So use those a bit more often. And then just every now and then, like maybe once a round or even once a set, every 2 rounds, come in with the overhead, especially once you've got your opponent scared and they're blocking. All right. Now I want to mention one last thing, which is drive rush solar plexus. You can also drive rush heavy punch and drive rush jab, but I think these are suboptimal compared to other options. But they're worth bringing in as part of your giving your opponent many things to think about at master level or maybe diamond 5. The nice thing about drive rush heavy punch is that you can do it from a bit further back because the heavy punch has a lot of active frames, 5 active frames, and it comes out really ahead of Ryu, and then he's kind of sliding into his opponent like Superman with that fist out in front of him. So if you find that you have an opponent who's just really staying away from you a lot, like Yuri, then this is something to work into your game. But look how far away I am now. So as long as they blocked that first heavy punch, there's not much that I can do. And if I'm coming in from this close, like heavy punch is cool, but I get more plus frames off the crouch medium punch. So generally crouch medium punch is just going to be better for the most part. The reason why solar plexus is cool, solar plexus is this one, is that you can do it from very far away, right? And it's still going to reach. That was not a good example. But you can do it from pretty far away, but it's so slow. I think that's generally a bad option. Like most people aren't going to be intimidated by that, and they are actually going to press a sweep or something and beat you. And if you drive impact, if they drive impact, you're going to eat it. There's nothing you can do. The thing that solar plexus is for is if your opponent is checking your drive rush. Now, I really doubt this is going to be happening in platinum, but it will be happening in diamond, and I won't talk about this again in diamond, so I want to say it now. So if you have someone who's really good at getting out, say, a crouch medium punch check or a medium kick check, then solar plexus, because it's sort of disjointed, like he sort of slides towards you and then he sort of pulls back and then the active frames come out. Often what will happen is that when you get to about here, your opponent's button will come out and it'll whiff, because that's exactly when the solar plexus slows down, and then you'll hit them. And you'll even get a punish counter or a counter hit. So you'll have even more plus frames, but you're already plus 10. So there's nothing to do with your extra plus frames. So just come in, solar plexus, heavy punch, whatever. Can't get her Shogeki, so just heavy punch types. Alright, but that's something I'll mention now. If you find that someone's just amazingly checking your drive rushes all the time, and you know that they're probably really proud of that, because that's a hard skill to have, so they want to show it off, then let them know that you have the counterplay. Alright, but mostly for now we should just be doing lows. This one, drive rush throw, is quite good to get momentum started, and then very occasionally the overhead. Let me say one last thing here, which is that drive rush gets your momentum started. It's all about snowballing. Street Fighter 6, unlike previous iterations of Street Fighter, is just not really about the neutral. You don't have to worry about, well, yeah, you just like, even if when you watch pros play, there's just not as much of this thing going on where you're trying to bait your opponent into doing something, and all this like high level mind game 4-dimensional chess stuff is happening in neutral. Most of the time people play here and then someone drive rushes in, because after that you've got the knockdown situation and you're drive rushing in after the knockdown and you're going to be plus again. So you're just constantly plus and your opponent has to just eat mix up after mix up. And that's why drive rushing in and throwing is actually just like really quite effective. But with Ryu, you can only do this stuff if you get in close, because his drive rush is so slow. Okay? Alright, hopefully that was good. See you next video.